This is R2D Tech and we're back again with another video today about iPad OS, so stay tuned.
So with this new iPad OS, and I should probably highlight that the one on here is actually the beta at the moment, but it should come out in September for the general public. The idea is that it becomes more like a computer, and not the computer that you imagine in the traditional sense with a mouse and full-on keyboard and everything, but a different type of computer, perhaps a new style of computer which Apple have invented.
Talking about some of the new features that they've added in iPad OS, you now have widgets on the home screen, which is, in my opinion, a really nice feature because it allows you to see all your important information straight on the home screen. They've also added a feature where you can pinch the keyboard so it becomes basically the same size as an iPhone keyboard, which is really nice when you want to use the keyboard with one hand. Another feature they've added is now you can have the same app open in split screen mode, which is really important considering the new Files app, which we'll talk about later. You now have the option of having multiple slide over multitasking tabs, and you can swap between them with Apple's gestures really easily, which is really nice. And if you want, you can also swipe up from the bottom and all the multitasking tabs will fan out, so you can choose between them.
One of the new features that really impressed me is actually the new Files app on iPad OS. So now it's actually more like a full-on Mac Finder view. So you can have two open at once because of the thing where you can have two of the same app side by side. And you can actually plug in a proper USB stick as long as you have a USB-C adapter. And you'll be able to transfer files between the USB stick and the iPad storage. Now this will work for larger videos as well, so you don't need to depend on AirDrop that much. And this makes it a lot easier to use the iPad as a full-on computer rather than just a recreational tablet. Another feature that we thought was really cool is that now you can use dual AirPods, so two pairs of AirPods on the same iPad. So if you're watching a movie with a friend, it's a lot easier now, on the plane for example. But we hope that in the future you'll be able to connect even more, maybe 3 or 4 pairs of AirPods to the same device. One thing which people may have overlooked slightly is the new feature where you can now hold on the Wi-Fi icon or Bluetooth icon in the controls panel, and this will let you select a network straight from there rather than having to go to settings like you did before. Now this is a feature that you've had on Android for quite a long time, and iOS people have been complaining about it for ages. So thank you, Apple, for finally doing something useful.
One feature that a lot of people were asking for was mouse support in iPad OS. And to be fair, Apple did add it, but it was as an accessibility feature. It's a very clunky experience. You basically get a circle with a dot in the middle, which you can move around the screen with a mouse connected via Bluetooth. Apple haven't changed any of the gestures to kind of accommodate for mouse support. It's basically like just using a finger, except you're using a mouse. Another feature that Apple added between macOS Catalina and iPad OS was screen sharing, so you can use your iPad as a spare screen for your Mac. Now you can either do screen mirroring, where you just get what's on your Mac on your iPad, or you can do basically a shared screen, so it's just an extension of your Mac screen. That is a really nice feature. Unfortunately, Apple are only allowing support for the newer Macs. There are going to be workarounds if you have an older Mac.
There's a few final features we'd like to introduce. First of all, it's to do with the pen latency. So if you have the Apple Pencil, it will now be half as slow. So the latency is half. It was already amazing, but now with the new update, you won't even notice any latency, probably, since it's only a very, very small number compared to other pens. Also, to do with the pen, on the actual display now where you had the pen palette on, for example, Apple Notes, It's now completely redesigned, and you get a ruler all the time, which is definitely something they should have had from the beginning. But also you get more options with the actual pens themselves, so thickness, color, texture, everything like that. The idea of this new pen palette also is that it's not just fixed to the bottom now, you can slide it to the left, right, or top of the display, and you can even minimize it into a small circle and put it into the corner when you're not using it. And now with this new palette, new apps which previously used their own palette, perhaps Notability in the future, will be able to take this on and use it with their apps, so you don't need to use like a second sort of palette made by the company themselves, which is actually really good. One final feature which you may not have thought much about is actually the new dark mode. It does give the iPad Pro a more professional feel, but also it saves a bit of battery life since the pixels are essentially almost off all the time. Now the iPad is an LCD display, so they won't actually be off, but they won't be operating on full power to give that bright white image that you have on light mode.
iPadOS was a massive upgrade from iOS 12 on the iPad. It brought in loads of new features that people are asking for. The one for me that's missing is mouse support, but hopefully Apple will add it in the next iteration. And it's definitely heading in the right direction. Another nice thing to see would be full support for desktop software, such as CAD programs, video editing software. That would be really good. Hopefully Apple will add that in the future. One last thing to mention was that Apple actually added the full desktop Safari in iPadOS, which was really good. Now you can use things like Google Docs properly, which is really nice to see. This was wait, what do we normally say? That's all we have today about iPadOS. We'll be doing updates in the future about it. But thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please give a thumbs up. If you loved it, please consider subscribing.